So till now, what we have done is we have created a very simple data entry screen by which we can go and add customers. We also have a very nice search customer functionality by which we can go and search the customers. Now what we'd like to do is we'd like to go and put a delete customer functionality. So let's go and drag and drop a simple grid view source from the toolbox here. So let me go to the toolbox here and let me drag and drop a nice grid view source, and let's name this grid view source as DTG customer. So let me go to the properties and let's put it as DTG customer, right? And let's go ahead and add one more button to the screen, and this button will help us to go and delete the customer. So let's go ahead and name this button as BTN delete here, and we'll also name the text as delete. Okay, and let's go ahead and change that submit button also to something called as add, so that that goes and adds because that's already adding the records of the customer to the database. So now what we'll do here is that we'll go and flourish this data grid with customers. So as soon as this screen runs, right, it will fill the customer record. So if somebody wants to go and delete a customer record, he will go and select the customer from the data grid, and he will hit the delete button, and the customer will get deleted from the database. So let's start coding this functionality. So the first thing is, let's go ahead and double click on the form. Now the time you double click on the form, you'll be popped up with the form load event, which you can see on the screen. Now this event fires for the first time when your form actually starts. So what we'll do is that we'll use this event to go and load our customers into that grid which we have just created. Okay, so you can see that I'm going and creating a very simple function here, or I'll say method here, called as load customer. And what we'll do is let's go to the search customer screen. So let's do one thing. Let's go to the search customer screen. We have already written the code for loading the customers in the search grid right over here. So we'll copy paste this code, and we'll just take this code and we'll paste it in this form load here. Okay, and we'll just go and change this grid name to the name of the grid which you have just created. So DTG customer, right? So now if you now run this form here, and if you just click on the enter customer screen, we can see that the grid is now flourished. Now what we'd like to do is that if somebody wants to go and delete the customer, he will go and select the record, and he will hit the delete button to delete the record from the database. So we have already done the one part of it, that is going and loading the grid. Now the next part which we have to do is we have to go and write a code on the delete button, which will help us to go and delete the customer from the database. Now before even the customer goes and deletes the customer record, we would like to give the customer an option where he can go and see the record before deleting. So what we'll do is that when a user goes and selects a grid, we will go and display the customer record, and then we can go and delete the customer. So let's try to figure out which is a good event which we can capture from the grid so that we can go and display the customer record. So if you see now here, there's a nice event here called as a row enter event. Now this event occurs whenever there is an input focus received on the row. So as soon as the user goes and selects this row here, he receives the input focus, and we would like to go and display the customer on the screen. So let's go and press enter. So you can see that there the event has now been, the code has now been created. So in this event, what we will do is that whatever row the customer has selected, we'll first go and get that customer name, okay, and we'll go and display the customer record on the text boxes which we have currently. Now the next thing what we'd also like to do is we'd like to go to the delete click, and here's where we'll go and put our logic to go and delete the customer from the database. So in short, what will happen is the user will go and click on the grid click on the record which he wants to delete. The row enter event will happen, will display the customer record, and then he will hit that delete click button to go and delete the customer from the database. So we are all set. Now it's time to go and write some code. So let's go ahead and create a very simple function here called as display customer. Now this display customer function we will call when somebody clicks on the data grid and selects a row. So this display customer function will take the customer code, or I'll say the customer name, and it will go and display the customer record on the user interface. So as soon as somebody clicks on the data grid and selects a row, the row enter event will be called. The row enter event will call the display customer function, and the display customer function will go and display the customer record on the user interface. So now let's go ahead in the row enter click event and declare a very simple variable here called as str selected customer. Now this str selected customer will have the customer name which has been selected by the end user when he has selected a row in the data grid. So you can see that what I'm doing is I'm saying DTG customer dot rows. Now DTG customer is nothing but a data grid dot rows, and you can see that e dot row index. Now that e dot row index is nothing but the current selected index value or current selected row index of the data grid. So I'm saying that, okay, go to the rows collection of the data grid, take the selected index, take the first cell. Now remember, the first column actually has the customer name. So I'm taking the customer name value and I'm pushing it to that str selected customer variable. Now this str selected customer variable will contain the customer name which is selected by the end user when he clicks on the grid, and this value I have passed it to the display customer function, and the display customer function will take this value and display the customer data on the screen. So let's go ahead and build this application. Now what we'll do is let's go ahead and test if really whatever the value which is selected on the grid is pushed into that str selected customer or not. So I've gone ahead and I have ran the application, and let me go and pop up the enter customer. Now what I'll do is, okay, I'll just go and run this. Okay, now let me go and put a debug point here, and what I'll do is I'll go and select Raju. Now let's see that if at least the str selected customer has a Raju value. It has Shiv. Okay, let me again go back and let me select, must be Sham. Okay, so I can see Sham has been selected. Very good. Let me again go and select, must be I can just select cust 1 2 3. Okay, let's see. Yes, cust 1 2 3 selected. Good. So you can see now how as soon as we select a value, it's actually going and taking that value and pushing it to that variable. So this thing is working fine. So as soon as we select the value, now we are coming to know which value is selected. Now the next thing is that whatever the customer is selected, we would like to go and display that value on the left hand side. So if you remember, right, we had created a data entry screen. So whatever value I have selected there, the customer value, right, the customer row, I want to go and display that value on the left hand screen, and the user can then go and hit the delete button to go and delete this record from the database. So now let's start coding in the display customer function here. So what we'll do is we'll go and select the customer name which has been passed into this function here, and we'll start then displaying the value. So I'm going to go and cut paste the same code which we had used in our search customer screen. The only thing what changes here is that we have to go and put the customer name. So you can see that basically we don't want to select all the records, but whatever name has been passed to this function, only that record we are going to select. Right, so you can see that I have tweaked the select star from customer table with a where clause there, and so and whatever name is passed to this function will be used in the select query, and only that record will be displayed, and we don't need to bind to any kind of data grid at this moment. So I'm going to go and delete that code from there. Now whatever data we're going to get into this tables here, right, whatever row we're going to get into this tables here, we're going to go and take that row and start displaying it on our UI. So let's start taking one field by one field from the row selected. So you can see that basically whatever data set is loaded, right, we're going to go inside the tables. Currently we have only one table, that is a customer table. So we're going to say, okay, tables of 0, and take the 0th row. The 0th row means the first row, because rows are 0 indexed. Okay, and take the first column and push it to the customer name variable. So basically you can see the way I have written the syntax here: obj dataset dot tables dot 0. So that means we have only one table, that is the customer table. Take the only one row which is selected, so take the 0th row and take the 0th column, that is the first column, which is nothing but the customer name. So in the same way, now let's take the second field. So if you see now, our second field is country there. So I'm going to go and create a string called as str country name, and I'm going to push the first column value to this field here, to this string here. So we have to mark the column as 1 there. In the same way, let's do it for the rest of the fields. So there I have created I have set all the fields, by using the what you call the column index. So you can see that the 0th column actually sets the customer name value, the first column sets the country name value, the gender is set by the second column, the hobbies is set by the third column, and finally you can see the married flag, which is nothing but a true and a false flag, is set by using the fourth column. Now if you look at the married flag specifically, right, I have converted that whole thing into a boolean because if you remember, right, the married data type which was there in SQL Server was a bit. So in other words, it has only true and false. So that's why I have gone ahead and I've set the value as boolean there, and all the other things I've set it as string. So let's go ahead and run the application to just check if the variables are getting set properly. So I'm running the application in a debug mode. I have started the data entry screen, the customer data entry screen, and you can see that there are a couple of problems here. You can see that the row enter event is firing unnecessarily. Okay, means I have not selected any row yet, and still this row enter event is firing. That is because the row enter event will fire not because when someone goes and selects the record, but even on a focus. Okay, so in other words, as soon as the row gets a focus, this event fires. So you can see that this event has fired because by default must be the focus is going on the row which is currently getting binded or added to the grid, and this is bad, right? This this code is not an efficient code. In other words, there is no selection of the record, and still this row enter event is firing. So must be we should pick up some other event of the data grid to make more sense. So let's right click on the data grid, and so we're going to get rid of this row enter event because it's not efficient. It fires on every focus and definitely not worth of it. Right, so let's hunt around for a good event. Now if you scroll above, right, there is a very nice event here called as the cell click event, and this is more better. In other words, it will only fire if somebody clicks on the cell or on the row, right? So let's go and pick up this event. So let's press enter, and you can see the event created there. So what we'll do is that we'll move our code from the row enter event to the cell click event here, and we'll see that how things can improve. So now let's go ahead and take the code from the enter event, the row enter event, and move it to the cell click event here. And what we'll also do is we'll just go and delete this event because we don't need it anymore. So let's go ahead and delete this, and let's go ahead and recompile a program just to ensure if we have any defects. I'm sure that we have one defect which we'll get, and that is because we removed the event, right? So we also need to ensure that we go and we remove the remove the handler for the event. So there it goes. So now let's again go back and recompile the code. So build solution, and everything is fine here. Great. So let's put a debug point and let's run this application to just check if at least whatever row is selected, those values are coming in the variable or not. So let me go and open the data entry screen here, and let's go ahead and select this row here just to check what happens. So I'm going to go and select this row, and I can see that the value is Raju. That is good. I'll just go and step in here, and let me just go and check out if other values are also receiving proper. So I can see that yes, it is making a select by using the Raju name. You can see that now he is going, and so if I first go, I can see that the variable customer name is now set to Raju. I can also see that the other variables are also getting set properly, right? That's good. And also the married thing, oh, you can see it has crashed here. Now this is but obvious, so why this has crashed, because if you go right to the server